Hey guys, this is the Lifting with Lauren podcast. It's been a hot minute. I wanted to use today's podcast to talk about sabotage, which is not actually a subject that I have talked a lot about with my clients, but I think through all of the lovely self-help things that I've done over quarantine and since then, I began to realize how prevalent sabotage is. We do it to ourselves. I've done it in my own business. I realize now I've seen people do it to their own fitness, their own health. I've watched people I love or that I once loved do it in self-sabotage in situations related to work. I mean, someone will get a great opportunity and then they ruin it for themselves. So we're going to kind of dive into a little bit of that, but we're going to look at sabotage from 3 different perspectives. So the first is self-sabotage. The second is sabotaging other people, and the third is being sabotaged by someone else. So I'm not sure how long this podcast will go, but I'm going to break down those 3 ideas. So the first is self-sabotage, which totally sounds like the most insane thing in the world. Like, why would you have a great opportunity or, be on the path toward making yourself better or be on the path toward a certain goal and then deliberately screw yourself up? Like, logically, it makes no sense, but we do it all the time. So kind of using maybe the job example. So I watched someone that I knew once really struggled with like getting on his feet, with getting a good job. It just seemed like he couldn't get ahead, like didn't have a car, didn't have any money, all that kind of stuff, and finally got a good job, had a way to get there, but then managed to completely screw it up because he did a bad job at work, like almost on purpose, even though he didn't have to do that, and then he did a bunch of other things to screw up his chances of keeping that job, so he lost the job. That actually happens super often. I have watched clients who I have worked with who will start off doing really well with like their workouts or with their nutrition, and then they start to self-sabotage. So let's talk about a few reasons why that is. Number 1, the first reason that I think is very important to address, we're going to be lifting heavy today, by the way, in case I didn't say that. So lifting with Lauren, we're going to be lifting like real heavy. So the first thing I think happens is I think we feel guilty, which we shouldn't, right? Because we're trying to make ourselves better. But very often, when you're surrounded by people who are not on the same path as you, and you start to move toward a goal, sometimes moving toward that goal moves you relationally away from those people. Let's use this in the context of marriage, because this is where I've seen it the most often. Marriage or, with a significant other. I will see that I'll be working with a client, particularly with nutrition, but workouts in general also, where they will, let's say they and their partner both start off and they're both overweight, or they're both morbidly obese, or they both have some things that they need to work on with their health. And in most cases with the people that I work with, it's usually the woman that will decide she wants to make change, and she'll come to me and we'll start working on things to move her toward her goals. Generally, it's going to be changes with her nutrition, changes with her exercise, and what I see very commonly, which is kind of eerie that this even happens, but it does, they will start seeing improvements in their bodies, and then they begin to feel guilty because they are doing better and their partner isn't. They are starting to lose weight, but their husband is still there and he's still overweight or he's still obese. They will start to, invest more money into healthier foods, or they start making better foods for their household, or they're trying to, in some ways, like, set their environment up for success, but as a byproduct, they're setting up everyone else in their household's environment up for success, essentially. Or maybe they're like, they and their husband want to have a night out or something, and, maybe their husband wants to go to like an unhealthy restaurant, and doesn't really have the best options in it. Granted, there are ways to work around that. But in all of those scenarios, it seems like the people that I work with, they start getting that headway, they start changing their environment, they start changing their choices, they start seeing change, and all of a sudden they feel guilty because they are different and their partner is the same. And it's not because, they have some kind of weird attitude change, like they're becoming a bad person. Just for some reason they feel like, oh, if I continue to get better, it's going to make them look worse. And I don't think people think this consciously. I've just seen this happen time and time again, where they will start getting better, the client that I'm working with or the person who is trying to improve their lifestyle will start on that path, they get dragged back down because they start to feel guilty. So that's one way that it happens, and they do it through a number of different ways. They start self-sabotaging. They're like, oh, well, I'm in this group of people that are all my friends, and I feel really bad because I even though I'm eating healthy, they're not, and I don't want to, make them feel bad, or I don't want to be embarrassed, or whatever, so I'm just going to eat what they eat, even though I probably shouldn't be at this point because I have goals that don't align with that, or that doesn't align with my goals. Anyhow, so that's one thing that happens. The second thing that sometimes happens where we self-sabotage is sometimes it's kind of the opposite, where we start to feel too secure. So we'll start seeing some progress and we'll feel really secure in the systems that we have in place and the things that we've done to make changes. And we get so secure in them that we kind of let the reins go a little bit, and then the horses fly off. So sometimes too early, if you start doing that, and once again, this is stuff that I'm kind of processing this when I'm using this podcast for. I'm starting to see that this happens most of the time in early situations with clients. If they are starting off and they're like a month in, 2 months in, or maybe even 3 months in, and they've started to make those changes, they start to see progress. They're starting to see the scale weight go down. If that's their goal, usually that's people's goals, weight loss. They'll start to see their measurements go down, or their clothes will fit better, or whatever. And they feel really great, and then they're just like, oh, I'm going to use this day to cheat. I'm going to put that in quotes because I don't like really using that word, but today is going to be kind of a cheat day. I've been doing really well. I'm going to reward myself. And then that day turns into like a day and a half, and that turns into 2 days, and then you're like, oh, screw it. I'll start again next Monday, so that turns into like 5 days, and the next thing you know, you've gone a week or 2 weeks, and you've really fallen off the wagon, and you've undone a lot of progress. Believe me, it can happen. So sometimes too much security can be a bad thing too, because if you, once again, let go of the reins too soon, and those habits aren't super established, and you don't have the discipline to get right back on the horse right after you jump off briefly. If you take that treat meal, which is like a term I like to use, if you take that one meal where you're going to overeat a little bit, and you don't get right back on the wagon, sometimes that can turn into longer term, getting off of the path that you're on. So that's another one. The next one is kind of like a feeling of unworthiness. So going back to still self-sabotage, I have not seen this as much, but I have heard of people kind of getting into this. It's not something I've discussed as much with clients. Sometimes, kind of related to the guilt thing, I think people can start on a path toward a goal, and they can start to feel success or see success, and for some reason they don't feel worthy of that. I think I can relate this more to like maybe a business sense. So if you're a business-minded person, I'll just kind of throw this in there as an example. We can start moving toward goals, and maybe like you're starting to see the fruits of your labor come to fruition. You're making more money, or you have more recognition, or whatever it is that is in relationship to your entrepreneurial goals. Sometimes we can actually feel unworthy of that. I know that I have done the exact same thing, where I'll start to see progress in my business, and then I don't feel worthy of it because I have this idea that I have to bust my butt all the time in order to see progress in my business. So whenever I start to see success, I don't really feel worthy of it, and sometimes I'll self-sabotage. You can kind of do the same thing with fitness, where like you'll start to see progress and you don't really feel like you should be. Like you have always been like, well, to use harsh terms, you've always been like the fat girl. Or you've always been, if you're the reverse and you struggle with gaining weight, you've always been the super skinny girl. And now all of a sudden you're seeing yourself, gain that muscle that you always wanted, or you're losing the fat that you've always struggled with. And maybe you don't feel worthy of getting to that point because you're like, oh, it shouldn't be this easy if it was easy for you. Or maybe you're like, well, I've struggled all this time. Why is it working now? I'm not. Maybe you're just not using the word unworthy, but maybe that's the thought going through your mind, and then we end up self-sabotaging. So those are some ideas of how that kind of comes about. I don't have a grand way of fixing that, but I want to point these out in case this is something that you have dealt with. So maybe just keep these in the back of your mind so that you can start to see your tendencies. The next one that I think is really important, and I'm going to get a little bit ranty here, is sabotaging others. So even people that I think, I'm not going to say I think, I know. People that I have worked with who have spouses or significant others or people in their lives who are also trying to improve their health. I have seen them sabotage other people. And that seems really cruel, but people do it sometimes not even consciously. I think the first reason why is because sometimes people feel shame. So if a client that I'm working with or someone that whatever, we'll just say a person, if they feel shameful about how they look or what their choices are or whatever, they will sabotage other people. It's kind of like, it's going to kind of tie into the other two too, but basically they have their own shame that they're dealing with, and because of that they are going to sabotage other people because it makes them feel bad if the other person starts to see success, right? And I have seen this time and time again. Once again, have like a female client I work with, her husband feels shameful, he'll sabotage his wife, kind of makes him feel better. That also ties into jealousy. So sometimes you'll see people who will start doing awesome and other people will get jealous. This can happen in like family settings where you have family members who, like, maybe they're not your significant other, maybe it's just a family member, and they see you having all this success and like, why are they having all this success? They've been fat this whole time. How come all of a sudden they're losing weight? Oh, she's spending all that money on her fitness. She should be spending on her kids. Like, blah, 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 blah. Like, judging them. But essentially, they're just jealous. Now all of a sudden that person looks better. Now all of a sudden that person's getting all the compliments. How come I'm not getting all the compliments? Like, sometimes that can lead to, oh, I'm making all this fatty food, or they'll throw it at them, or they will share shameful comments. Maybe someone in your family is just a B word and they don't like to see that you're having success. Once again, they're jealous of you, so they're going to throw mean comments at you. They're going to do anything that they can to, in their mind, basically pull you down because they feel bad about themselves, which also leads to the next one, insecurity. When someone is insecure about themselves, they're going to try to pull down other people to stay on their level. So, could be the husband and wife example. Maybe the husband feels really bad about himself and he doesn't want to see his wife succeed because then that means that he has to face the fact that he's overweight or obese as well, or he is out of shape, or he has issues that he needs to deal with. If the wife or vice versa, if the husband is pursuing this fitness thing, then it's like, oh, well, if they get fit and healthy, what if they don't want me anymore because I'm not taking care of myself? Are they going to want somebody else? Like, all of these insecurities start to surface, and then we go back to that kind of shame thing or whatever. And this kind of dynamic can happen. I don't want to say it's crazy because, people are not, this is perfectly sane people have this kind of thing happen. These are not crazy people, okay? It just, when you say it, logically, it sounds crazy. But it happens every day. Like, I've done it. I know my husband has done it. I've watched plenty of clients do it. So yeah, insecurity can play a really large role in sabotaging somebody else. And it is unfortunate, and it's something that needs to be addressed. And I'll cover that in a second. But if you are the person who is insecure, or you are the person who is jealous, this might be a good, if some of this stuff's resonating with you, if I'm saying this stuff and you're like, oh, I might have done that to somebody else. I might have seen somebody who actually started to take care of themselves and I said some bad things. Or my husband was actually trying to get healthy and I decided to buy a bunch of fatty foods because it made me feel better if he ate it. Those things can happen. So if that's you, hopefully this kind of is bringing it forth in your mind, so now you can address those things. You can either talk about them or maybe you can stop doing them. It's not that easy, but that's another thing to keep in mind. Okay, so the third one is others sabotaging you. So what do you do when someone is sabotaging you? I will be honest, the reason that I am doing this podcast today is because I've had a couple of conversations this week with clients and people connected to clients and I realize that they have got a lot of sabotage going on. And I, as a trainer and a coach, cannot actively deal with that. I can bring it up and I can do things like this podcast and I can bring it to their attention, but there's nothing really I can do with it because it's their relationships. It's their, their marriage, their partnership, their family, their whatever. They have to be the one to deal with that. So I am sharing this with podcast listeners, so maybe you can do the same thing. The first way I think you need to deal with this is set boundaries. Okay, that should be obvious, but let's talk about what that actually means. The first thing is, what am I trying to do? What is it? What is my goal? And what does that mean that I'm doing in my household to reach those goals? Let's say we're going to use the weight loss example because it's easier. So if you're trying to lose weight, one of the things that we end up working through at some point, is we have to change the foods that are in your household. If you have high calorie calorie dense foods in your household, more than likely you will eat them, unless for some reason you absolutely hate the taste. This is actually from Precision Nutrition. This is Berardi's first law of whatever, is that if it's in your house, you will probably end up eating it. So you have to change what is in your house or the layout of your kitchen so that you can't access those foods easily. And sometimes those are called red light foods. So foods that are either going to cause you distress or they're going to pull you away from your goals. You have got to get those out of your house. Maybe that's one of the things you start with. Or maybe another thing that you're doing is you are consciously not going out to eat at particular restaurants or not going out to eat at all because you need to have more control over what you're eating. Just depends on where you are in your path. Maybe, let's see, what else? If it's exercise related, maybe you are, keeping a certain part of your house clean on purpose so that you will go to that area and you will work out every morning. Or maybe you are setting aside certain times every evening and it's been established, this is my time every evening to go and work out, and you're trying to make sure that you're able to get to the gym or get into your gym and you're able to get into workout. So that is kind of like what you're trying to do, and these are the steps that you're taking to get there. Make sure that you have that established. The second thing is, how is someone else interfering? Is it someone at a family event that they're just saying mean things, and that's kind of the way that they're sabotaging you? Maybe it's an emotional way that they're interfering. Is it your husband or your wife or the people in your household, your kids? Are they complaining about the changes that you've made in foods? Now, coming from the perspective of a married person, if you're going to be making those types of changes, obviously you do have to discuss it with the people in your house, because you can't just change all the food and expect everybody to be on the same page as you. So maybe instead of like throwing out all the crap food and getting all the good food, you instead make it harder for you to be able to reach the bad food. So for me, like if I were trying to lose weight, which I'm not, but if I were, I'm a short person, I would put all of the bad food on the top shelf or whatever. Or maybe I want to put all of the more calorie dense foods on the lower shelf so that's easier for me to get to, and I don't know, harder for my husband or something. I don't know. But you have to make sure that, number one, you're discussing those things with people around you, but if they are complaining about that, maybe that's the way, okay, you're thinking that's the way that they're interfering. It's another, maybe it's leading to an emotional response, but they're complaining about the changes that you made. Are there other things going on? Is there more of like every time you try to go to work out, something goes wrong, all of a sudden something comes up. It's like someone in particular is deliberately interfering with your ability to maintain your appointment. Could be something like that. It could be that you have that designated area in your house to go and work out, and every time you turn around, somebody's throwing their laundry in that spot, or they're throwing crap in that spot, making it harder for you to feel like you can easily go and work out. So establish what it is you're trying to do, the main goal, the steps that you're taking to get there, and what it is in your schedule or your regimen or your house or your environment that is the thing that you're using, and then establish how it is somebody is interfering in that environment. And then address that. So if you can be as specific as possible, you can address it. For me personally, so this was actually a problem that I had in my previous relationship a long time ago, is that I don't necessarily feel like I need someone to come right up behind me and be like, yeah, Lauren, you can do it, go! I don't really need someone to be full-on supporting me in that way, where they're always there and always engaged with what I'm doing. But I can't stand when someone's against me. The previous relationship that I was in was a very emotionally abusive relationship, and one of the ways that he would try to control me is I wanted to be better at karate. So the specific things that I did was I would train with my mentor once or twice a week, early in the morning, and I set it up where he would be at my house at 7 in the morning, and I would work out for 2 hours, and then I would immediately go to school or whatever it was, because I was in college at the time. I deliberately did it that way so that nobody else was awake. I wasn't bothering anybody else. It was first thing in the morning. I got it done. I made sure I was staying disciplined, and it was no big deal. And then I would try my best to make it to the dojo in the evenings a couple nights a week. But what my significant other at that time was doing is he would say really awful things about karate and how it's stupid and how I'm wasting my time and I'm such a loser and I shouldn't be wasting my time doing that stuff, and he would say bad things about my teachers, and it was a lot of emotional abuse. And it was really, really hard for me to continue to do it because that's how he was trying to control me, is he was trying to throw those emotionally abusive things out there, or throw those insults out there at me to try to draw me away and get me away from something that he wasn't involved in. So this is kind of in our case, it was an emotionally abusive situation. It's not in every case, but that's how he was trying to sabotage me. I was able to pinpoint exactly what those were, and I did address that. Now, it never changed. And that's why the relationship no longer exists. But I did address that. I was able to say, I don't need you to support me. I don't need you to do it with me. But I need you to not say these things about these specific pieces of my environment, these specific parts of my life. So, once again, if you have that established and you're able to see exactly how they're interfering, do the same thing. If you need someone to come behind you and support you, maybe you can try to convince your family member, your loved ones, your friends to do that for you. Maybe you hire a professional to do that for you. Maybe that's why you have a coach, because they're the one that's coming behind you and supporting you, and you might need that. I didn't feel that I needed it, but maybe you do. So maybe you have them for that, but you have to establish with the people who are sabotaging you, hey, it's not okay for you to talk crap about what I'm doing. It's not okay for you to throw all your stuff in my workout area. It's not okay for you to complain every time I make myself a healthy meal, because I have a goal and I'm trying to work toward it because I want whatever it is, okay? So that's another thing. And the other thing is, I made a note of this, so I might kind of ramble because I can't remember exactly what my point was, but start to notice language or actions from people that start to be more like sabotage. I don't think we really want to think about that with people. I don't think we ever want to accuse someone of sabotaging our goals, especially if it's a significant other, because we love them. We want the best for them. We assume they want the best for us. And maybe they do in theory, but they don't understand how to put that in play. Maybe they're dealing with, the jealousy, the shame, the insecurity. Maybe they're dealing with those things. Or maybe maybe it's other things. Maybe they're afraid of you spending the money on it, or they're afraid of you spending the time on it. So because they're so afraid, they have to throw all these other things at you to stop you. Maybe it has nothing to do with your progress. Maybe there's other things that they're concerned about. But once again, if you can see that, if you can see where there are issues or where they're interfering, you can start to have a conversation and be like, hey, you're doing these things to interfere with me. You're actually sabotaging me. Can we talk about this so we can come to some kind of either a middle ground, or can you cut that crap off, because I have goals that I'm shooting for. I'm trying to do this for me. If you love me, you need to let me be able to move toward those goals, and maybe they'll be on board and they'll be able to move toward those goals. Maybe they are concerned about you and they think that maybe you're hurting yourself. Whatever. But being able to be conscious of what's being said, of the actions that are being taken, what it is that's interfering with your goals, and then being able to have an open conversation with the people that are sabotaging you, whether it's yourself or it's somebody else, I think that's going to lead to, number one, a better relationship with the person, as long as you're doing it in love. But secondly, it's going to make it easier for you to move toward those goals, and you might find that they end up supporting you wholeheartedly, and you get to your goals faster. So, hopefully that was helpful. Yeah, the dog just sneezed. Hopefully that was helpful. If you have experienced any sabotage, If you're on YouTube watching this, put down in the comments below what kind of sabotage have you either done to yourself, or what has someone else done to you to try to sabotage a goal that you've worked toward. Or if you're brave enough, have you noticed yourself trying to sabotage other people? Put that down in the comments. And if you're listening on other podcast platforms, you're welcome to send me a message or send me an email. But until the next time, stop sabotaging people and go kick your goals in the butt.